Hi, welcome to this episode of Knit, Pose and Books. I'm Sorrowland and today I wanted to share with you some fall reads because fall is almost over and I've been looking at what I've been reading and some good fall vibes reads. And while talking about these amazing books, I will be knitting some socks. So this is my current project. I'm making big socks with big wool, with Aran wool, and I've been making one pair already, and I'm making a second one because I'm making those for friends. So yeah, socks are to me the perfect fall project. I always make tons of socks during the fall season. So the books that I wanted to share with you today are, so I realized I mostly have a theme when it comes to fall. I tend to read a lot of horror and thriller and books about like ancestors or books that have that kind of vibe. So the first book is the one that I'm currently reading, and it is House of Anger by Alexis Henderson. And it's a gothic horror book that follows a young woman who, so it's in a world that is kind of vampire inspired. It has major vampire vibes, but it's not the usual vampire tropes. It's kind of reinvented, and it's in a world where people in the south live in very industrial cities, and people in the north are like noble who live in debauchery, and they employ those blood maids who are young women who give their blood to the noble because they consume blood. And so we follow this young woman who decides to go to the north and become a blood maid, and she ends up in the House of Anger, which is this like huge mansion with at its head is it Countess? And her name, Countess Elizabeth. And so there's a sapphic story in there, and it's very gory and very, very well done. I'm not finished yet. I still have a little bit, so I'm still like on the edge of my seat. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but it is so good. I'm really enjoying it. And I wanted to talk about another book from Alexis Henderson that I read last year. So this is House of Anger that I'm currently reading, and last year I read her debut, which is The Year of the Witching, and it's so also very gothic horror. That's her style apparently, and I really love it. And this one follows also a young woman, but in a kind of puritanical society, with like there's like race factors because she's black, and she's a different race than the society that she's a part of, because they're all like white and the black people are kind of on the margin. So there's like all of that, but also some witches in the dark woods, and it's a really, really great read. And there's a sequel that is supposed to be coming out. I think it's called Dawn of the Coven, which I'm really excited about because it was a bit like it took a little while to develop, I found, but the end was really good. And there's a romance in there with some like power dynamics that are so interesting to read. And yeah, I'm super excited about the sequel, especially after reading House of Anger. I'm getting really, really excited about this author. So, and still in the horror, so another horror book that I read this year. So I read this for Black Readathon, which is hosted by Locked Booktition, and it's about like reading books by like horror and thriller books written by Black authors for Halloween. And so for this I read White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson, and it's the first book by Tiffany D. Jackson that I read, and I was not disappointed. I really enjoyed it. So it has a haunted house, which is something that I absolutely love. I'm obsessed with haunted houses. I'm obsessed with old houses in general. So when they're haunted, even better. And so it follows a family that arrives in a new place, and the mother got an incredible job offer, and they're like they have like in the job offer, the job comes with a house that is on the street that is completely abandoned, and so they try to like make a new life there, and the narrator is the girl of the house, and she has a kind of dark past with substance abuse, and so there's this whole like, and she tries to like learn the truth about the place where she lives, what's been happening to this neighborhood, why it is empty, and why people are fearful of the place where they live. And so there's a whole like political racism component to it, but it's also some incredibly great writing, and for like horror. I was at the edge of the seat there, like the creepy noises and the house and all of that you expect from a horror book with a haunted house. It was really great, and I know some people have made some criticism about the ending of this book, like the plot twist, but I did not mind it. Like it would have deserved, I don't know, like 50 more pages, because I think like the antagonist deserved more airtime and more like complexity, but it was really so great. I read it super fast and really loved it, and I'm so excited to read more about Tiffany D. Jackson. I know she does mostly thrillers. I think this was her first horror book, but she's been writing, she wrote another horror book, like Carrie inspired, since, that I think I'm going to have to pick up now. Yeah. So let me count my rows, so make sure not to need too much of those while I'm talking. That's what I thought. It's cable time. Here's my cable needle. Here it is. Another thriller. So I read a thriller, also written by a Black author, and it's Ace of Spades. And this one is so it's a YA thriller. It follows some kids who are in a super exclusive private academy. So it's like a private school that is very fancy, and so they're surrounded by this rich kids. So one of the narrators, there are two narrators, and they're like, I like the fact that they are not like friends with each other, or they don't really know each other that much, but they are the only two black kids at school, and so one of them is from the like bad part of town, and the other is a rich girl who has I think a black mother and a white father, and so we follow these two characters, and they start getting kind of bullied, and by this mystery person who reveals like secret informations about them, and so it's really, so it's that kind of thriller where you're like in the intensity of what's happening to them. It says a lot, of course, about like institutionalized racism, and it was really a great read. Yeah, still in the like, kind of horror thriller vibes. because that's what I mostly read this fall. So this one is not a book that I read this year, but it's one of my favorite books, and when I think about fall, I have to think about this book, and I read it last fall, so it makes sense. And it's Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon, and Rivers Solomon is one of my favorite author. I've read all of their books. I think there are only 3, but I've read all 3 and I love them all. And this one happens in the woods, so it's kind of it's almost like science fiction horror. It happens in a gated community, like a community that is closed off to the rest of the world, and it's a black community, and they're like very religious and very controlling of the main character's body, so it's really about body autonomy, a lot of the themes of the book. And so this young woman ends up running from the community and going into the woods, giving birth to children because she's pregnant, and so she's kind of raising them as feral in the woods. And there's like, yeah, it's hard to describe and summarize as a book. It's so good. It was like nothing I had ever read before, and I think I need to read it again. Honestly, I don't reread books usually, but this one would deserve a reread because I did not know what I was getting into, and it was so good. And it's very queer, so the author is queer and non-binary, and so yeah, so there's all of that too. There are like some queer relationships in there, and it was so powerful. Like the protagonist is this force that is completely untamed, and it was amazing to read, honestly. So that's why I wanted to mention this book, because I want everyone to read it. It's so good. And one book by Rivers Solomon that I actually read this year is The Deep, and it's a novella, and I don't usually read novellas, so that's why I had not read this one before, but because it's Rivers Solomon, I had to pick it up, and it's so beautiful. It's a book about like a society of underwater people, so kind of mer people, if you will, who are like who are born from the enslaved women who were thrown overboard during the slave trade, and so they gave birth to those people, to these people of the sea, and it's a society that is kind of utopian, and has like a harmonious organization. But there's this one person in the society who holds the memories, and is the only one holding the memory. And there's this like ceremony each year where this person has to like kind of share the memories of the whole community with everyone, and so they feel and remember once a year, but the rest of the time they don't, and they can live their life kind of free of the memories of the past. And so yeah, but this person, it's becoming too much for her to hold, and she cannot like so the protagonist is called Yetu, and she cannot hold those memories alone anymore. And so it's really about the weight of the past and the weight of memories, and who is to carry the memories, and how, yeah. It's a really beautiful book. And yeah, it's so beautifully written. Each time I read a book by Rivers Solomon, I'm so impressed by the writing. It's so powerful. Then one other book that completely blew my mind, I don't know even how I can talk about it, is Freshwater by Kweke Emezi. And Kweke Emezi is also an author that I really enjoyed. This book is their debut, and it's about like a, how to describe this? It's about a girl who has kind of different selves because she because there's a like a god entity that came from the other side and crystallized into her body, and then kind of crystallizes into different entities uh, while she lives her life and while traumatic events happen to her. And so, and it's like the voice and narration is so original. Like it's written from the point of view of the entities, the different entities, and sometimes from the woman's point of view and the person, the narrators. I don't want to say woman because it's definitely a genderqueer person. Ada, it's called her Ada. But yeah, it's like it was really powerful, really like hard at times because it's reading a lot about trauma and how we heal from it, and it's about like African spirituality and in ways like it was the kind of book that I know I could not grasp most of it, but it's not meant to be fully understood. And I do enjoy not understanding everything about a book, about a story, because it's not meant for me to understand. But yeah, that was a really, really powerful book. Then, because it was like Indigenous Heritage Month in November, I followed the Scoden readathon that was hosted by Native Lady Book Warrior. I think that's what her name is, her YouTube name. And so I read, for that I read a few books written by Indigenous authors. So the first one is a thriller, and it's Firekeeper's Daughter. And I've had that in my TBR for a while and never picked it up, and I don't know why now because it was so amazing. So it's a thriller that happens on an Ojibwe reservation, and so it's about a young woman who after witnessing a murder joins an undercover FBI investigation, and starts investigating the murders that have been happening on the reservation. And there's like some drug traffic happening, and yeah, and it was like I usually the reason why I hadn't picked it up before is that I don't usually enjoy like police FBI stories. I'm not into policing at all, so I don't really enjoy those stories. But this one was really great, especially because the protagonist is really strong, and she really learns how to navigate preserve working for her community, and so she joins the FBI investigation knowing that she wants her to be the one investigating her community and not some strangers, even though the FBI agents are indigenous, or one is indigenous. So there's all of this complexity happening, and there's a love story between the FBI agents, the undercover FBI agents, and the protagonist, which was really great because I found it really nuanced. He is still an undercover agent, and getting kind of lost in his character, and this because he himself is trying to find where he belongs and is his community, and is like kind of, yeah, and he's enjoying having a place, like being with a person who has this in her community. And as the protagonist also has a very interesting role in her community, because she has an indigenous father who passed away, but her mother is white and from the richest family in town, but yet she still is an indigenous woman, and she still is part of the culture through especially her aunt. And so that was interesting to see someone trying to navigate her identity as a half outsider, half insider, and trying to figure that out. And yeah, and it was like the action, the twists and everything was really well done. It was really a great read, really powerful, and there's a lot about like indigenous Ojibwe culture in it that was woven in a very interesting ways, and yeah, the author put a lot of her culture into it, and it was really amazing. So yeah, so that's it for Firekeeper's Daughter. And another indigenous book that I read is a fantasy. It's my only fantasy this month. I do read quite a few fantasies, but I read way more horror and thrillers this season, kind of, that I usually do. That's kind of the fall vibes to me. And so the book that I read, the fantasy, is so it's this sequel. It's Feared Star, which is the sequel to Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. And so this fantasy series is inspired by pre-Columbian Central American mythologies, so kind of Aztec, Mayan, and all that mythologies. And it is so yeah, I did not know what I was getting into when I first picked up Black Sun, because the summary on the back cover really did nothing to, like, I did not know what this was about, honestly. But it's about so it's very mythological. It's about a god, like, or the incarnation of a god into a man who comes back to the city where he is supposed to take back the power, and so it's a very complex world building, a very interesting, but like not like it's not this kind of books that are very annoying world building to read. It's really fast paced. There's a lot happening, and yeah, and there are a lot of characters. So it's big, like those kind of big fantasies with lots of characters and lots of things happening in different areas. And so I really love Black Sun. There's some super interesting relationship between the characters, and so there's like this crow god, and there's a ship captain who is a teak, and they're kind of the mer persons of this world, and so they end up having a relationship, building a relationship, and then despite everything that is supposed to like go to this city and just die for his cause, but they still build a relationship meanwhile. And there's so the sun priest of this city that the crow god is supposed to overthrow, and so there's all of those characters. And there's what I love also is that there's a lot of queerness, but not like it's just queerness because it's a pre-colonization world. So there's like, it's normal. There's a like a third gender, and they use like zero pronouns. So it was really nice to have the use of new pronouns in a book, in a fantasy book like that. And there are several characters who use these pronouns and who are I don't remember the name of the gender, but from this gender. So So yeah, and I had loved Black Sun, and I really enjoyed Fever Star too. It was more like political. It felt like a lot of moving things to prepare for what is sure going to be an amazing third book. But there was still like some interesting relationship happening between characters that had not met during the first during Black Sun, and that now got to meet and develop a kind of bond, and that was so great to read. I loved it. Can't wait for the third one. I kind of, yeah, can't wait. And yeah, and finally, so this one I read a little while ago, but I wanted to talk about it because it's an horror book written by an indigenous author, and it's Empire of Wild by Cherry Dimelin. And it's it's a story that follows a woman from a Métis community, and she is looking for a husband who has disappeared. And there's this and she like discovers someone who looks like her husband, and she's like, but he doesn't recognize her, and he's like a reverend. So there's a religious aspect, and it's about the rogarou. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like a werewolf figure. It's inspired by Métis werewolf stories or rogarou stories, and it was really unique and amazing, and terrifying also, kind of. That was really good. And the reason why I wanted also to mention this book is because after reading Empire of Wild, I checked out her other work, and I saw that she wrote a dystopian series for YA, a YA dystopian series, and I picked it up and ended up choosing this as our book club pick for the Knitpost book club, because I host a book club every season. So our winter book club pick will be, let me get it, The Merry Thieves by Cherry Dimelin. And so it's a dystopian novel where in a dystopian world, like, people have stopped dreaming, and only indigenous people keep on dreaming, and so they are hunted for to be like killed, and for people like want to harvest their bone marrows because their ability to dream is in their bones. And so it's kind of a heavy like world and a heavy book, but it's so beautiful because it's really about like the power of storytelling and how like through dreams and stories communities keep existing, and that was really beautiful and inspiring. So I can't wait to chat with the group of the Knitpost book club about this book, because I think there'll be a lot to chat about around this book. And so we're doing each time, if you want to join, I'll put the link below, where each time we're like gathering to knit and chat about the book. And like, knitting is not even mandatory. If you want to do some other creative activity while talking about the book, you're welcome. And so we meet on Zoom once per season to talk about a different book. And we also have a knit along that is inspired by the theme of the book. So this time the theme of the knit along is indigenous made, or indigenous designs. So so participants are encouraged to pick up either a pattern that was designed by an indigenous maker, an indigenous designer, or a yarn that was indigenous made. So yeah, it's just to support indigenous businesses and indigenous creatives. So yeah, so that's it for this first episode of Knitpost and Books. I hope that you enjoyed it. I'm pretty new to this. This is my first ever book podcast, but I love talking about books so much that I thought I'd give it a try. Please let me know your thoughts, what you'd like to see in this in future like episodes of this podcast, and this video series, maybe, or if you have some suggestions of fall reads, or if you have read any of those books and want to let me know what you think. So thank you for sharing this moment with me. Yeah, and can just show you how my sock has grown. Not much. I've been talking a lot with my hands and I've not been knitting that much while I was talking to you. But still, it was really nice to have a sock to make. And yeah, and it's a pattern that I'm creating on the fly. It's inspired by another pattern of mine that is the Donegal sweater. So I just took the central cable, so no, it's the side cable, and made it a central cable in the socks. So I'm having a lot of fun with those, and I'll keep on knitting. So thank you for watching and have a beautiful rest of your day.